and to shed more light on the top event of today, which is the ceasefire for 10 days. I'm so delighted to be accompanied over the phone by His Excellency Ambassador Raouf Saad, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening, ma'am.
Well, Your Excellency, of course, today the top event is the declaration of the ceasefire for 10 days of the war that is going on, and still there is some escalations. But is this a serious approach for a little bit quiet and reducing the tension and for further stopping or stoppage of this war?
Well, let me put it this way. I think it's the right moment to reiterate what I've been saying since the moment President Trump stated that there are no longer goals to attack in Iran. At that moment, I made it very clear, even in the media, that it's my belief that this is the beginning of the disengagement of the American forces from the attacks taking part in Iran. And since then, we have realized, that the increase of attacks and, amplification of the attacks, which look very much contradictory to what I have been saying. But in my belief, when I was asked, I said that this is part of the negotiations, that mutual attacks were part of negotiations. Let's put it like military negotiations, in order to reach a point where all parties will be convinced that this is the moment to arrest this kind of development. And the question is why? Why? Because all the parties in this war have been on the loser side. And they are really losing, whether political credibility or losing huge losses internally, whether in infrastructure. I mean, it depends on on which party we are talking about. So this part, the point that we have reached, is really very significant in terms that it's opening the door for reaching a final conclusion of the war and heading to a final settlement as well. But let's be very clear that having this kind of truce is not guaranteed, and it does not mean necessarily that we are on a safe track towards peace, because the original roots of the problems or the agendas of the parties involved are still there. But it's without being on wishful thinking approach, I believe that in the 2 weeks to come, if you analyze the statements made, even particularly by President Trump, I mean, when he declares that the plans or the points made by Iran are considerably possible to negotiate or basis for negotiations, then you should know that President Trump, as well as Iran, were in need of a rescue agreement or a breakthrough that has taken place. We have to make it clear on the side of the American side, the losing approach is very high in terms of the political credibility of the president and the administration altogether, in terms of the increasing opposition from the American public opinion, in terms of the public opposition from the closest allies. So altogether, politically, the American position was on a weakening approach. Iran, of course, the kind of losses that they have been suffering from are huge and very difficult to compensate even. The only precaution that we have to be aware of, that spoiling this agreement that could take place by the Israeli side or by Netanyahu side. because this is not very much in terms of his goals, which have not fully achieved, and we can see a reference to this in terms that he's continuing the attacks on Lebanon. So that reflects, in a way, the hidden intentions of Israel in order to spoil this agreement, as much as he has been doing in order to distract the whole world from the second phase of President Trump's plan for Gaza. So this is where we are, but in this regard, I think it's very appropriate to state that Egypt's role, although it's not in the limelight, this is a kind of foreign policy which is not aiming for compliments or for appraisals, but it was very intensive, very extensive, behind the surface in a very subtle manner. So that would add very much to the credibility that Egypt has consolidated and established since the war in Gaza started.
Well, Your Excellency, of course, since this war sparked, there's a lot of statements, declarations, and also a lot of actions which proves the opposite completely. When it comes to President Donald Trump, he was threatening, yes. Today, even he did add like 50% tariffs on the countries supporting Iran. Yes, this truth is very beneficial for both sides, I guess, and also for the region. And of course, we cannot deny Egypt's role when it comes to the mediation and also the declaration of calling for the other country's sovereignty and integrity also.
Well, you are confirming what we have been talking about, you know, the kind of intensive efforts and mediation efforts by Egypt, Pakistan and Turkey, together with undeclared pressures by other countries in the world. I mean, the EU, Europe, and even from Asia, from China, Russia, all parties, all other parties were against the barbaric way of the war is being shaped, and we hope that this, you know, when usually in the universal crisis, you have to reach the big point, the top of the crisis, in order that will be the way in order to pave the way for a solution. I think it's time again to not to make a prediction, but my expectation that we are at the beginning of a new era in the Middle East, whereby the old balances of power could be transformed to a different way, taking into consideration the lessons learned, started from the Gaza war and continued by the war in Iran. And with this regard, I believe that the Arab world will witness a significant transformation in attitudes, in policies, together with a higher voice of the public opinion in the Arab world and in the Middle East altogether.
Well, Your Excellency, I guess the U.S. was waiting for a push for more mediation. I think that the U.S. wanted to keep her picture as more arrogant, as more stubborn, as more powerful, name it. But I think we again, with this top 10 points that was actually approached by the Iranian. How do you see the top 10 points? Is it in your point of view? Is it the scenario is going to work for the Americans, or are they going to compromise more or waste time more while Israel is striking more and more?
Well, I'm afraid that the sound system is not very clear, but let me try to respond to a question which I think you raised. Again, I mean, if you want to analyze, if I heard you correctly, because I doubt very much, you know, whether I'm you know, on the right track. But I think you referred to the public opinion. If I heard correctly, I think the public opinion in Iran, public opinion in the United States, public opinion in the whole world, Western or Eastern or Northern or Southern, the whole world, you know, is witnessing unprecedented way of waging war without any mercy, without any respect for the humanity of the people, without any respect for the future of the countries as they did with Iran, let alone that Iran, I think for different reasons that they may have, I think they made a historic mistake by attacking the Arab countries, particularly that their attacks were not exclusively centered on the American military bases, but it hit civilian areas in the Arab world. So altogether, that would be part of the lessons, in order to reprogram the Middle East, not necessarily in the way that Israel or other countries are aiming at. I believe that there is a wake-up call for the Arab world in order to reconsider altogether their policies, and it's very timely now that we have a new Secretary General for the Arab League that would be the starting point of the reform, not only the Arab League, but as well as the Arab relations altogether.
Well, Your Excellency, there were a lot of statements for Donald Trump while he's saying that there will be a transform or a reshaping in the regimes and governments, and he said or assured that it's already changing. What, in your point of view, what did he mean by that?
Again, I mean,
can you hear me now, Your Excellency?
I have to assume what you are saying because the sound is very, very...
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Better?
No, but I mean, you are referring to estimate change. If you are talking about the change of regime, if that was your question,
yes.
Well, you cannot predict, how would it happen. But I think what is clear that the goal of changing the regime in Iran has not been achieved. That does not mean that Iran will not witness different changes, internal changes. And because if the Iranians were unified due to the attack not only on their territory but on their sovereignty, but that does not mean that Iran will continue with the same system, with the same way of life. So I believe that one of the lessons that the regime in Iran has learned, that it's time to start a new reform that would be economic, political, as well as social and cultural as well. But changing the regime, I think it's in order at this stage.
And Your Excellency, how about that when this war sparked, actually all the international community and even prime ministers from different parts of the world that accusing, first of all, of course, Trump and his administration, that they are taking all the side from the real cause of Gaza and the case of Gaza and phase 2 of the negotiations. So that was spread like fast when he got this a bit of comments and anger actually about the Palestinian case.
I think we are taking the same length that the whole region. I think that the war in Gaza, the war in Iran, will not be taken as just wars that have taken place and come to an end, and not even by concluding agreements. The change will be deeper in the whole region, and we would witness maybe different conflicts in terms of how the Israeli agenda will continue. Because as I said before, we have to warn strongly against a spoiler role, a spoiling role by Israel in order to reach its agenda. They want to have a regime change. They want to dominate the Middle East. They rely very much on the Abraham Accords. They believe that they have reached a high level of normalization with Arab countries. All these factors, I think, are subject very much to change. So that would be an important part from the within the region, but all together will depend very much on how the Arab countries, the Arab world, will wake up for a new era where we can use the power and the resources and the abilities that the Arab world has in order to get to the Arab world, move the Arab world from the receiving end position to the initiative part in order to change what is in interest of the Arab peoples of the region.
Well, I think, Your Excellency, also the lesson learned is that solidarity, unity is one of the most important key pillars of any developed nation, and of course paving the way for more peace, especially when the word Egypt is involved. I think this is very appreciated, and I think there will be lots of actions in the coming up period, but we hope for the best, not just for the region, even for the Arab countries and the Middle East. We're still speaking about truces, we're still speaking about peace, we're still speaking about actions also. And what really was very provocative is that even the spokesman of the United States at the Security Council was speaking about the actions of atrocities towards humanity and the humanitarian attacks that all the areas right now being striked are suffering from. Meanwhile, we're speaking about Israel and the strikes. Nobody mentioned that.
I think you are making a good analysis. No one can predict exactly what would happen, but as I said, we are just making a kind of analysis of the situation and a presumption of the possible effects of the situation. But I think what we have to do is to hope for the success of reaching an agreement within the next 2 weeks, and not to get back, because if we get back to a war, I think that would be excessively destructive and with terrible effects not only on the region, not only in Iran, but on the whole world. So let's hope, and I think we'll have to breathe now, at least for the next 2 weeks, to get the world trade is coming back to order, and you know that prices of oil will come down, and Hormuz Strait will be opened. And by the way, I believe that the Iranian will respect very much the items of the agreement. And you have to take into consideration here that the first signal of their respect, that I think the group in Iraq has declared that they will stop any operations. That means that they got the instructions from Iran, and I think others will do exactly the same.
Well, for the best for the region and for the whole world. Your Excellency, Ambassador Raouf Saad, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your informative call. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and we'll be back.